When I was a rabbi in Miami, one of my balabatim came to me with the following shaila. He reconstructed the situation and he had a question what he should do. His wife was cleaning the kitchen with bleach. This was about 40 years ago. Bleach in those days came in glass bottles. If you don't know what a glass bottle is, ask somebody who's a little older. And the woman was cleaning the kitchen with this bleach, and the bottle fell over and broke, but neatly across the top. So most of the bleach was intact, but it was dangerous to keep it in this bottle with a rough glass broken edge. So she didn't want to waste the bleach, so she took the bleach and poured it into a Coke bottle and left it on the floor, left the kitchen for a few minutes. One of her children came into the kitchen, sees the Coke bottle on the floor, thinking that it was a Coke bottle with Coke in it. He puts it in the refrigerator. Now there's a Coke bottle with bleach in the refrigerator. The husband comes home from a tennis match, very thirsty, reaches into the refrigerator without looking, feels around for the first Coke bottle, takes it out of the refrigerator and puts it to his lips. Baruch Hashem, when the bleach hit his lips, he realized this is not new Coke, old Coke, Tempo, or anything else. This is not something to drink. And he didn't drink it. He came to me and wanted to know, should he bench Gomel? Because had he not stopped at that point, right, l'chora, the bleach would have probably caused his demise. What were you going to say? Nobody here had any bad intentions. Everybody only wanted to do something good. The housewife was not interested in murdering her husband. She was interested in saving some money and saving the bleach. The child was not interested in murdering his father, right? He just wanted to do his mother a favor and pick the Coke bottle off the floor and put it back in the refrigerator where it belonged. The man was not interested in committing suicide. He just wanted to quench his thirst. Nobody had any bad intentions, only good intentions. And therefore, had he ended up drinking the bleach, it would have not harmed him at all because nobody had any bad intentions. True? False. If he had drunk that bleach, it would have burnt his kishkes out, and that probably would have been the end. What do you see from there? That sometimes you can have all the good intentions in the world, but if you drink the bleach, it's going to destroy your insides. The same thing goes with Lashon Hara. In the end of the Seder of Baloscha, Torah tells us that Miriam HaNeviah is troubled by the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu separated from his wife, and she goes to speak to her brother Aaron about this terrible situation in Moshe Rabbeinu's home. Why would Moshe Rabbeinu have to separate from his wife, even though he's a Navi, but they're also Nevi'im, and they didn't have to separate from their spouses? And the Torah says that Miriam spoke Lashon Hara about her brother, and she was punished, seemingly with the Makkah of Tzoras. She had to stay outside the camp for 7 days. The Torah tells us concerning that incident, Zachor eis asher asa Hashem Elokecha leMiriam baderech b'tzeis leMitzrayim. Remember what HaKadosh Baruch Hu did to Miriam, and this is a remembrance in order to remind us not to speak Lashon Hara. Two things are troublesome here. The first thing is, it would seem that in order to give us the incentive not to speak Lashon Hara, to speak negatively about people, we're enjoined to remember and speak negatively about Miriam constantly, what she did wrong, to remember not to speak negatively about people. And even though the truth is, if the Torah says that you can do this, it's not Lashon Hara, but it seems a little strange that the Torah would use remembering and speaking about Miriam negatively as a way of reminding you not to speak negatively about people. And secondly, there's a medrash. The medrash says that in the schus, in the merit, that Miriam waited for her little baby brother when he was put into the Nile in a basket to see what would be with him. In that schus that she waited for him, she had the merit that when she became a Metzora, and she had to stay 7 days out of the camp, the entire Jewish people waited for her. And Chazal say what happened. The Anon, the cloud that signified when they were to break camp, started to move, and all of a sudden it stopped. And everybody asked, why is the cloud stopping? Why aren't we moving? And the word went through the Machane because Miriam is outside the camp. She is a Metzora because she spoke Lashon Hara about Moshe Rabbeinu. That is a tremendous schus for Miriam, that now the entire people know what happened to her. To me, it would seem that it would be a bigger schus if Miriam went out of the camp quietly. Nobody knew about this except the Rabbanu Shalom and her two brothers, and it would be kept a nice secret forever that this happened to Miriam. Instead, the Rabbanu Shalom made it that the cloud should stop, everybody should be talking, and in that merit that she waited for her baby brother, now Miriam had this tremendous merit that everybody knew that they were waiting for her 7 days because she was a Metzora. Miriam spoke Lashon Hara. Let's see what the background is. What motivated her? What was her intention? What did she actually accomplish with the Lashon Hara she did? Torah tells us that Miriam was sitting with her sister-in-law, Moshe Rabbeinu's wife, Tzipporah, and she commented, Eldad and Medad became prophets, so she commented, wow, these people are very special, right? They were able to become prophets. To which her sister-in-law, Tzipporah, said, yes, but I feel bad for their wives because my husband separated from me because he's a prophet, and I feel bad for their wives that they're probably going to separate from their wives. Miriam said, wait a second. I'm a prophet. My brother Aaron's a prophet. We never had to separate from our spouses. There must be something wrong with the Shalom Bayis of Moshe Rabbeinu's home, and he told his wife he has to separate from her because he's a prophet. So she went to speak to her brother Aaron that they should see what's going on with the Shalom Bayis of their little brother Moshe and see if they can do something. Her intentions were 100% good. And she just didn't realize that Moshe Rabbeinu's level of prophecy was different than their level of prophecy. She didn't know. And she didn't hurt Moshe Rabbeinu at all. First of all, it wasn't in front of him. She wasn't insulted, embarrassed. Even if it would have been in front of him, the Torah tells us right after this, V'ha'ish Moshe Anov Ma'od. Moshe was the most humble person that ever lived. Didn't bother him. It went off his back like water goes off a duck's back. And not only that, some say Anov, the Medrash says, is from the word Oneh. He had answers. If they would have asked him, he would have told them right out why his prophecy is different than theirs. Her intention was 100% good, to help the Shalom Bayis of her little brother. She didn't go and tell this out in the public arena. She told it to her other brother. Her mistake was, first you go to the person and face him. You don't go speak behind his back to somebody else, even to his brother. That was a mistake. And she didn't know that there was a difference between her prophecy and his prophecy, and therefore she assumed that there was something beyond the scenes here, something behind the scenes that was more than just that he separated because he was a prophet. Her intention wasn't bad. She did this completely b'shogeg. You can have all the good intentions in the world, not intend to hurt anybody. You just, it's just interesting tidbit of knowledge that you're speaking, or Rahman al-Itzlan, in this generation, you can type something on an email and destroy people and not have any intention of hurting anybody, but as soon as you push that send button, you have now perhaps destroyed somebody's life. But if you didn't do anything. Nobody accepted it. Nobody heard it. Nobody knows the person you're talking about. But you've destroyed yourself because you drank that bleach without any bad intentions, without harming anyone. But you harm yourself. You've drunk that bleach. If it's classified as Lashon Hara, which it was by Miriam, even though she didn't intend, she had only good intentions, that's what we learn from Miriam. We learn from Miriam that even if you do nothing wrong per se, you had no bad intentions, you harmed no one, but if you fall into Lashon Hara, it destroys you. That's what we learn from Miriam. And therefore we learn from Miriam not what she did, but what the consequences were. Because what she did was basically a mistake, a good intentioned mistake. But she fell into drinking that bleach by accident. Look what it did to her neshama, at least temporarily. And that's a source for Miriam. If it would be that we'd be speaking and saying Miriam did something terrible, then that wouldn't be a schus, that would be a gnai, that would be something negative about Miriam. But we're saying is the following: we can't blame Miriam per se. Miriam had only good intentions. She only spoke about her brother. She didn't do him any harm. But look what happens to a person who speaks Lashon Hara, even if you can't blame them. But look what happens when you drink the bleach. That's a schus for Miriam. But that schus is only a schus if we can be assured that Miriam had no bad intentions. That's what Chazal say. In the schus that Miriam waited for her little brother, put her life in danger, as the Rambam says, because saving a Jewish baby was punishable by death in Mitzrayim. So being around and being an accomplice to somebody trying to save this little baby's life put her life in danger. Is it at all logical to assume that a sister, an older sister, who put her life in danger for the sake of her little brother would now maliciously speak against her brother? Impossible. So in the schus that Miriam waited for her brother and proved that it's impossible that she did this maliciously now. It must have been a mistake. It must have been with good intentions. And therefore we're not speaking derogatorily about Miriam of what she did. But we're learning from Miriam that even if you have no bad intentions and it's all a terrible mistake, it's still going to burn your kishkas out. It's still going to burn your neshama. That's a schus for Miriam. And therefore the entire people waited for her and knew what happened. So we could remember for all generations to learn from the consequences of Miriam how bad Lashon Hara is, even though we're not speaking anything derogatory about Miriam herself. If there would be any doubt that Miriam could have meant this maliciously, then the Torah would have hidden it, because then it would have been derogatory about Miriam. And that's why Torah tells us something interesting. Right after the parsha of Miriam is the parsha of the Meraglim. And the Rabbanan explained the connection. The Meraglim should have learned from Miriam not to speak Lashon Hara. And they spoke Lashon Hara about Eretz Yisrael. There's only one problem. The Gemara also says that we have to learn a Kal V'chomer from the Meraglim. If the Meraglim only spoke Lashon Hara on Eitzim V'avonim, on stones and wood of Eretz Yisrael, an inanimate object, the land of Israel, and look how they were punished, how much more so somebody who speaks Lashon Hara about a human being. Now those two things don't go together. Because Miriam spoke Lashon Hara about a human being, about Moshe Rabbeinu. So why should the Meraglim learn from her not to speak Lashon Hara on inanimate objects? Well, the answer is very simple. When Miriam spoke Lashon Hara against Moshe, it was like speaking about rocks and trees, because it didn't make any impression on him. It didn't hurt him. It rolled off his back. He's just as if he was a tree they were talking about, an inanimate object. And still, look what happened to Miriam. Didn't cause any damage. Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't hurt in any way. He didn't care. But when you speak Lashon Hara, it's drinking bleach, even without any bad intention. That's what the Meraglim should have learned. Lashon Hara doesn't depend on how you damage something else. You damage Eretz Yisrael by speaking about it? No, it's wood and stones. But you hurt yourself. You devastate yourself. You devastate the world. And Kol Shekain, we can still learn a Kal V'chomer, that if you speak about somebody who is damaged, who is hurt, how much more so is that Lashon Hara already has two damages. The damage to the person who speaks it and the damage to the person who's being spoken about. The first Beis HaMikdash was destroyed because of Gili Araya, Shvichas Damim, and Avodah Zarah, those three sins that were punished in this world and the next world. But Lashon Hara is worse than those three sins. And the second Beis HaMikdash, which still hasn't been built, unfortunately, was destroyed because of Sinas Chinam, and the Chofetz Chaim says Sinas Chinam is basically identified with Lashon Hara. So these are the sins that destroy the basic foundation of humanity. And these are the sins that destroyed our connection to the Ribono Shel Olam in the Beis HaMikdash. And that's why Chazal say, Kulam ba'avak Lashon Hara. Most people don't realize when they speak Lashon Hara that they're destroying anything. It's only a joke. I don't really mean it. Person's not going to be really, really damaged, right? I don't really mean anything bad. It's just juicy gossip. But remember what happened to Miriam. She didn't even do it as juicy gossip. She did it with good intention. She did it for her little brother. She didn't harm anybody. And look how it devastated her soul and made her a Metzora. And therefore people think that, what am I hurting? Not hurting anybody by speaking the Lashon Hara. right? Who's going to be damaged? Who's going to care? Doesn't make a difference. If you drink the bleach, it's going to affect you in the most devastating way. And therefore, it's important for us to appreciate the power we have in speech. And if you appreciate the power you have in a positive way, then you'll never come to use that same speech in a negative way. That's why when we finish Shemona Esrei, which is one of the ways of using our speech in the most positive way, you use your speech to talk to God and to perfect the world and to create various things that take away negative things in the world. And when you finish speaking to the Ribono Shel Olam with your mouth and using your speech in such an exalted way, you know what we do? We say, Elokai, Nitzor L'Sholni Meira Usvasai Medaber Miriam. Ribono Shel Olam, I've just come to a realization of how powerful my speech can be. Please, don't let me use that speech for anything negative. Don't let me take that tremendous tool that I have and abuse it and use it and distort it in the most terrible way that destroys me and destroys the world around me too. And then, if we are careful and understand and learn from Miriam how devastating Lashon Hara is, not because of the damage it causes to others, because the damage it causes to ourselves, then we'll be zoche to the day that all of that will be corrected. The world will come to a point when the Ribono Shel Olam will give clear, pure speech to all the nations of the world. And with a pure speech, we'll be able to bring the world to perfection. That the world will be able to serve God shoulder to shoulder with one unity. We will understand ha'emes v'hashalom ehavu, when emes and peace, which is the antithesis of Lashon Hara. Torah is emes, the antithesis of Lashon Hara. Shalom is the opposite of what Lashon Hara creates, machlokas and divisiveness. When ha'emes v'hashalom ehavu, then these days, the 4 fast days, Shivasar B'Tammuz and Tisha B'Av, and Tzom Gedalia and Asara B'Teves, Yiyu l'sason u'lesimcha b'mheira v'yameinu.